Hey, have you ever been on the fence about buying a pre-built gaming rig, only to wonder if you're just throwing money at a flashy case instead of getting something that actually lets you hit 144 frames per second in your favorite titles? I was in that exact spot last month, scrolling through endless listings, trying to figure out whether a high-end CPU and a brand new GPU would actually translate into smoother gameplay for me, or if I'd end up with a box that looks great but stalls on the real-world games I play. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So I dug into the specs, read a handful of forums where people were swapping stories about the Ryzen 7 9850X 3D and the Radeon RX 9070 XT, and I put together this rundown to help you decide if the Skytech Gaming Azure 3 is the right fit for your setup before you spend a big chunk of cash. First off, let's talk about who this machine is really built for. If you're the type of gamer who spends weekends diving into massive open-world RPGs like Starfield or Baldur's Gate 3, or if you Twitch play competitive shooters and need every frame you can get, the Azure 3 hits a sweet spot. The Ryzen 7 9850X 3D is a 12-core, 24-thread processor with a base clock of 4.7 GHz that can boost up to 5.6 GHz. On paper that sounds overkill for most games, but in practice it means you'll see less CPU bottleneck when you crank settings to ultra in titles that are heavy on physics or AI. Pair that with the Radeon RX 9070 XT, which brings 16 GB of GDDR5 memory, and you've got a GPU that can comfortably push 1440p resolutions at high settings without choking. The 2 TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD also means load times are barely noticeable. You'll be in the game world faster than a typical SATA drive could ever manage. Now, the real test is how it behaves once you plug it in. I set it up in a modest 58-foot bedroom, connected a 27-inch 144Hz monitor, and ran a mix of titles, Elden Ring, Valorant, and a couple of indie games that are CPU light. In Elden Ring, the Azure 3 delivered a stable 7,580 frames per second at ultra settings, which is impressive for a single GPU without resorting to DLSS. In fast-paced Valorant, I saw a consistent 170,180 frames per second, which meant I could max out my monitor's refresh rate and enjoy buttery smooth motion. Even during long play sessions the temperatures stayed cool thanks to the 360mm AIO liquid cooler I measured around 55 C under load, which is well below the thermal throttling point. That cooling headroom also kept the fans whisper quiet, so you don't get that constant hum in the background when you're trying to focus on in-game audio cues. But there are a few practical trade-offs to keep in mind. The first is the size and weight. This is a full tower case with a hefty 360mm radiator, and it weighs close to 30 pounds. If you're planning to move it between rooms or take it to a friend's house for a LAN party, you'll need at least 2 people to lift it safely. The case also has a fairly dense front panel, which can make it a bit tricky to fit into tighter desk setups. I had to shift my speaker placement a couple of inches to avoid the side vents, something you might need to consider if desk real estate is already at a premium. Another thing to note is the Wi-Fi 5802.11 AC module. It works fine for basic internet use, but if you're aiming for a high-speed wired connection or want to future-proof your network with Wi-Fi 6, you'll probably want to add a separate Ethernet adapter or upgrade the internal card. The built-in Wi-Fi isn't a deal-breaker, but it's not the bleeding-edge tech you'd expect from a premium pre-built. Luckily, the motherboard has an extra M.2 slot, so you can swap in a faster SSD or add a dedicated Wi-Fi 6 card without too much hassle. Let's talk about the software side. Skytech ships the system with Windows 11 and a clean installation, no unnecessary bloatware cluttering up your drive. That means you get to start game installations right away, and you won't need to waste time uninstalling trial software that some other pre-built brands tend to bundle. The only thing you'll need to handle yourself is the driver updates for the Radeon GPU, which is a straightforward process via AMD's Radeon software. Once that's set, you're good to go. So who should walk away from this deal? If you're a casual gamer who mainly plays indie titles, 1080p shooters, or spend most of your time on streaming services, you might be better off with a more modest build. The Azure 3's high-end CPU and GPU are more than you'll ever need for those workloads, and the price premium could be redirected toward a better monitor or a quality headset. Also, if you're a DIY enthusiast who loves the satisfaction of building your own PC, the pre-built nature of this machine might feel limiting. You won't get that hands-on experience, and you might prefer to source components yourself to get a better price/performance ratio.